Welcome to the Glucose Never Lies podcast. I'm John Pemberton, a diabetes educator and researcher living with type 1 diabetes since 2008. I started the Glucose Never Lies website when my son tested positive for type 1 diabetes antibodies. In that moment, I realised I needed to build a resource strong enough to guide anyone who might care for him. At first, that meant writing clear, actionable management guides, but listening to Peter Attia's The Drive taught me something. Peter's conversations provide depth across nutrition, exercise, pharmacology, sleep, and much more. But I always find myself wondering, how does this information apply to people with type 1 diabetes? And this podcast is my attempt to fill that gap. I have access to the world's leading researchers and thought leaders in type 1 diabetes. That gives me a unique opportunity to combine lived experience, professional expertise, and cutting-edge science, and to share it all on here in conversation. But an important note, this podcast is for informational purposes only. These conversations share knowledge and experiences. They do not create a therapeutic relationship. So, let's get started. Welcome to another episode of The Glucose Never Lies, and this is our series of Beyond the Numbers. And I'm glad to say I'm joined today by Millie from Diabetes with Millie. How are you, Millie? You okay?
I'm all good. How are you, John? Thanks for having me on.
Yeah, no problems. I'm good. I'm really excited to have you on, actually, to really continue this theme that we've had with the last few episodes of Beyond the Numbers, is basically people who have obviously had a diagnosis of type 1 diabetes, which we'll find out about, but more so that they have experienced it in a different way. They have come up with complementary strategies other than the standard stuff for diabetes management, and then seem to, through social media, developed a fairly robust following of people who really resonate with some of the things that they're doing. And I think that's so important, because when people with diabetes get diagnosed, a range of different people, and they resonate with different things, it's just really interesting to see what type of things that people are connecting with, what they feel valuable, and what it is with that approach that you're kind of offering or putting out into the world that may resonate with a few more people. So, with a big preamble, it would be really helpful maybe for the listeners to get a bit of a feel for who you are, how old you are, but most importantly from your diagnosis, kind of what did that look like? How did it start? What was going on?
Yeah, absolutely. So I am now 25. I was diagnosed for, I think it's going on nearly 5 years, in January 2021. I was 21. I was born in 2000, so it's really easy for me to figure out how old I was. Just go with the year. So I was 21, and I was going through my final year of my biology degree, which was perfect timing for diabetes because my exams were a couple of months away. So it just completely threw my life upside down. Before my diagnosis, it was the third lockdown. So because it was Christmas, I went home to my mum's, and my mum said, "You're not looking how you usually do, Millie." That is because at the time I was trying to live a healthier lifestyle. So I was focusing on my nutrition, but as I maintained my calories, I was losing like 2 pounds a day. So the weight loss was like accelerated, even though I didn't do anything different. So that's what I noticed.
Yeah,
It's out of my hands. This is not really something that I'm doing. It's I need to go to the doctors. The reason I went to the doctors actually is because I lied down in bed and my heart was racing, and I thought I was anxious because of my exams. So I first went to the doctors for an ECG to see if I was dealing with any anxiety, and the ECG came back tachycardic, but okay. He was like, "You're doing all right. We'll put you through some bloods just to do an MOT, make sure all the background's good." And 2 days later, they rang me back and said, "You are heavily in DKA right now. You need to go to the hospital." And that's when everything started to align in my head. I look back on the past couple of months and I was like, oh, I was dropping out of a lot of labs in university because I was getting cold infections. I couldn't see out the window clearly when I looked at the buildings outside. I was like, oh, I can't pinpoint certain things. Obviously the weight. I started to eat more, actually. I remember before diagnosis, I was eating like 3,000 calories, losing 2 pounds, which just it's just not adding up. So yeah, it all aligned in my brain, and I was like, oh, that all makes sense now. The 6 pints of water that I was drinking, 6 litres of water that I was drinking, that all makes sense. So yeah, I went to the hospital in lockdown. Wasn't fun because I couldn't take anyone with me, and was there for the weekend and was popped on with a Libra and insulin and sent on my way. And yeah, diagnosed with type 1.
So that's be quite interesting actually, because that's a very different experience. Obviously, the first part is quite common for people with diabetes. Obviously, weight loss, going to the toilet a lot, and obviously parents recognising reminds you very much of mine. I've been playing cricket in Australia, and I came back, and my mum looked at me, she's like, "Well, wow, what's
Yeah,
happened to you?
yeah,
You lost loads of weight, but you don't." I've been away for 6 months, so I just thought I'd lost it gradually. Yeah, she recognised that, but even still, then didn't like pick it up. Still went to work. And it wasn't until I went to work, one of the nurses like, "Oh, you should just test your blood sugar," and it was like really high. But obviously, with me, I had family and friends around all the time, sort of, especially in a time when it's it's quite disconcerting. But you're obviously in a time of COVID where you've gone in, no one's coming to the hospital. When you go home, it's just your parents, and your friends can't come round, even these bubbles and things. What was that like?
Not great. It was really tough, actually. I do remember one of my friends broke the lockdown rules. I'm just putting out there now. She made me a pancreas pillow and drove all the way to me. It just delivered this pillow. We didn't spend much time together. She was like, "I just wanted to give you this," and she'd handmade a pancreas with a little smiley face on it, and it was so adorable. And I really needed that at the time. Um, I also couldn't go out to like exercise. I couldn't go to the gym. I couldn't be in my usual routine. So everything was just really crazy at the time. Yeah, I just had my mum and my sister and my brother with me, which I really needed to just be with family. But yeah, it was hard when lockdown ended to then venture out into the world because I was used to the lockdown, like close knit community of me and my family. So I was really scared to go in public areas with crowds, injecting insulin. All of that was unknown to me because I had just been in the house when I had a hypo. I just run upstairs to my bedroom, grab some hypo snacks, and I was just in my own little comfort zone. So it was another change when lockdown ended to then go outside. Yeah, it did make it harder for me.
And I think you said, so we also had a little chat before, that you've always sort of been into activity and exercise. What kind of activities were you into at that point?
Yeah, before diagnosis, I was big on sport. So, when I was a child, I played cricket for Lancashire, played football in my hometown Wigan, and from sports, I then led into the gym and strength training and hypertrophy training because I moved to university. I wasn't looking for like a set routine with a team. So yeah, I started to go on my own training, like solo. And yeah, I started strength training. So then when I was diagnosed, I think I got back into a home workout a couple of weeks after diagnosis, which looking back was really brave of me to do that. But I think I needed it for my mental health more than physical health, because that is what I'd always known. And I'm glad I do have that sport and like exercise background because I think that looking back on the past 4 or 5 years, it has really helped me out with my diabetes management without actually realizing it because that's just a passion of mine.
Yeah, I think that's just an often underlooked, well, an often missed sort of value of the management of diabetes, because obviously everyone
Mhm.
knows carbohydrates, insulin, but the benefits of activity on your insulin sensitivity, your insulin requirements, your glucose control, just general levels of activity can be obviously very beneficial. But there also comes with challenges as well, because your glucose levels sometimes can drop and rise fairly quickly with exercise. Did you have any challenges with managing your glucose levels around exercise at the beginning?
At the beginning, yeah, that's when I had my first hypo. My first home workout, I had my first hypo, and that was really scary. I've actually got a picture of myself. Don't know why I decided to take a picture, but I was crying my eyes out with 3.8 on my little glucose meter. And yeah, it was a struggle. But I, again, looking back, I'm glad that I did push through with it because there are acute problems with exercising with type 1, but the long term benefits of exercising with type 1 just completely throw the rest out of the park. So I think exercise is a fundamental tool for me to be able to enjoy the rest of my time. And I do really enjoy it at the same time. So yeah, it was a struggle at the start, but because it was locked down, I was at home. I could work out and then go to the kitchen if I needed hypo snacks. I had my family around me, so it was actually sort of a benefit for just being at home, stuck at home, because I had the chance to figure out the basics before I then went out into the gym and didn't have my family there and didn't I wasn't in my safe environment, so I was able like to progress onto that afterwards.
So I found your comfort zone at home with what you're doing in general. And then obviously, as with anything with type 1 diabetes, it's the self experimentation that can only happen. Like you can have the theory about what's going to happen, but the beauty of it sounds like you had a continuous glucose monitor. So that gives you the opportunity to learn fairly quickly what happens, what's important to keep an eye on, what sort of different strategies work for you and what don't. And that can obviously be very individual also. So it sounds like you definitely had a bit of an experience with those journeys. And I noted at some point in time, that kind of strength training team sort of environment of maybe more intense sport, sort of then yoga came into the picture.
Yeah.
When did that happen?
Yeah, so I was practicing yoga on my own for a couple of years because strength training makes your muscles really tight, and I couldn't touch my toes at one point. So I started yoga for the flexibility aspect. My family are quite spiritual anyway, so then I started to delve into the reason behind yoga, and then booked myself on a solo trip to India. That was 2023, so 2 years after diagnosis. And I went to India for a month, stayed in an ashram, and learnt the ways of yoga for 26, 27 days. And it was it was amazing. It was so good, and it's a good blend that I've got now between strength training. I still obviously I've got my strength training a couple of times a week, and then I've got my yoga. So I feel like the two blend in really nicely together because yoga stretches your muscles out, strength training compacts them and builds them. So it's nice to have them both in my routine at the moment.
And what was it like managing your diabetes when you're in India? So obviously it's a completely different environment, different temperatures. You're doing presumably 6, 7, 8 hours of yoga a day,
Yeah.
different types of foods. That is a serious undertaking, different to your usual environment anyway.
It was probably the first time that I experienced complete burnout to where I just don't care what my sugar levels were. The first couple of years of diagnosis, especially the first couple of months, I logged everything religiously and I monitored those glucose levels. 250 scans I had on my Libra at one point, and my doctor was like, please give it a rest. Like, you don't have to scan your glucose levels that much. And then going to India and being involved in a different culture, it was it just took my mind off diabetes a lot more. I think it was a different diet because I was so involved in the yoga training. Diabetes became completely on the back burner, which was the first time that had happened. And I did have crazy roller coaster blood sugars at the last couple of weeks. I was training, like I was practicing yoga 4 or 5 hours a day, which is a lot of movement, but it wasn't the strength training that I had in my usual routine. So I think that with the high carb diet, I wasn't eating meat. So the protein had also gone out the window for me. I just wasn't in my routine, and that made my glucose levels out of out of control. When I got back, I obviously got that back under control, when I got back into my routine. But yeah, the last couple of weeks, I just honestly, I just didn't care.
That's it kind of comes, doesn't it, in like in waves, especially when it's not top of mind and you've taken enough insulin to stay out of DKA, and you kind of that's going to happen. But maintaining perfect levels between 4 and 10 doesn't seem possible, and you're there for a particular reason. You kind of as inevitably goes to the back burner, and so obviously you've got a range of experiences from sort of diagnosis in COVID to strength training, and then yoga, and then combining the two. At what point did you start sort of venturing onto social media and talking about diabetes with your relationship to it and all these changing variables? When did that tend to happen?
That was a couple of months after diagnosis. I think I made my account in March 2021, which was 2 months after I was diagnosed. And that's because when I was diagnosed, I did search other creators and I loved what they were doing. I loved the fact that I could learn from other people online. And with the way my life was before diagnosis, I was really spontaneous. I constantly moved around, not only the UK, but I loved traveling. And with my biology degree and then progressing on to exercise physiology and having that love for the body and love for how the body works, I thought I'm going to document my life with type 1. Hopefully it'll help me out and it'll also help other people. And it's done exactly that.
And so, how did that sort of grow over time? So, I've got no idea how social media works. I've
Yeah.
got Anjani who works for me. She does all the social media because it's not I don't get it. I don't really consume it as such. I do in certain aspects, but not really. But it's obviously what I'm finding with the conversations I've had with other people who've had similar experiences to yourself, documenting them, people sort of resonate with. How did your sort of audience start and grow, and what's it kind of built into? What sort of things did people contact you with, etc.?
I just watched it happen. I've got no idea. The first month or so, there was 1,000 followers there, and I was just happy that that had happened. I've just been posting my life and the research that I did in university, and yeah, people turned up, and I followed people. They followed me back, and I have no idea how it actually happened. There was no plan to what I was doing. There was nothing that I had in mind that I wanted to achieve. It just kind of happened along the way. And a lot of people then started to reach out to me with the research that I was doing, wanting to know more about that exercise, nutrition, mindset balance. And I just created connections from that. And that luckily the community is my safe space. Over the past 4 years, I've created my home online as much as people are glad to have me on Instagram as well. It's a two-way thing. It's not really me putting stuff out for other people. I'm also getting something back from it, which is the community. They're so loving, so kind, and everyone's on different paths, but we've all got something in common. So it's been amazing to meet so many people from all across the world with a common thing that's changed their life.
Yeah,
Yeah.
common bond. Yeah, I think that's when someone's had a diagnosis and they understand what it takes on a daily basis. You monitor your glucose levels, you think about your insulin, you think about your carbohydrates, and you've got planned activities coming up. It's pretty intense at times. It's pretty intense, and to know that someone else is also having those challenges and also those decisions to make, and it's like being difficult, etc. It really sort of kind of just makes sense when you're catching up with people. And your community, like obviously that you're mainly is Instagram where people catch up with you, but you said you've got some other formats as well that you then developed, or is that not
Yeah.
something that's happened?
I did try TikTok and then I deleted it at the start of this year because I was just doom scrolling for hours. Instagram's been the one platform that's kept me there and engaged consistently. TikTok, I just have a difficult relationship with because I feel like it makes me not do the stuff that I'm supposed to be doing in the day. And yeah, I just find it overwhelming to create content for multiple platforms. I really admire those people that can uh, juggle different platforms. But no, Instagram's the only platform that I'm using for diabetes with Millie at the moment. I did have TikTok for a little bit, posted very inconsistently, and it just didn't work out.
Yeah, no, it's interesting. Like for me, like I said, I don't have a good understanding of all the different platforms. I don't necessarily, people connect with different people, but it seems from what I can gather that Instagram seems to be the place where you can get a better real life perspective of what kind of people are doing, what kind of things they're interested in, what things work for them. And it seems to be easier to kind of share those sort of journeys, which is interesting. And it seems from your platform, when I've taken a bit of a look, there's a big sort of like East meets West kind of, you've got the strength training, you've got the Eastern philosophy with the yoga, the nervous system, sort of breathing, meditation. What kind of things certainly from the East perspective do you think supports your diabetes management and also the people who sort of follow your stuff? What do they get out of the different types of things?
Yeah, everything that I post is really just what I've learned. The yoga aspect came in earlier on, but in 2023, when I went to India, that's when it really solidified, and I became so in tune with the way that yoga can benefit us. And I think some key takeaways is mindset and how I perceive myself, and especially that helped me out a lot when I was having hypos, because I used to go in a spiral when I had a hypo, close to panic attack. It really wasn't a nice experience. It isn't going to be. It's a hypoglycemic episode. You're going to freak out. But then how I use my logic to get me through a hypo and also calm me down, breathing exercises, mindfulness, bringing myself back down to reality. Those are all things that I got from my time in India. So they help me out a lot now. And I feel like I don't have as much of a freak out when I do go hypo. It's helped me out a lot in general life, but especially in type 1 diabetes. Yeah, it's not reacting as much because I know how to bring myself back down to what's really going on. Yeah.
Guess sort of on that same theme as well, a lot of people get triggered by higher glucose levels in terms of the frustration, the annoyance. They're kind of taking it personally, which is very easy to do. You're kind of like, done the same thing
I still
as I did yesterday, but I've gone, hi, what's going on? Is a very easy spiral to kind of throw yourself into. Do you feel like the sort of the Eastern philosophy techniques that you're discussing, is that what some people within your community are using it for? Or is that something that's you yourself use?
I do. Yeah. I'm not too sure whether the other parts of the community do, but I definitely breathing exercises for one are really good for when I'm hypo. But I've not got round to the frustration of hypers yet. I still do fall into that bracket of hypers that still really frustrate me, and I do go on an emotional roller coaster when I am hyper. I think it just takes me back to before diagnosis. Makes me feel like I'm reliving that trauma of being diagnosed when my sugars are high. It's same as now. It's November. It's around the time of year when I did start to become ill. I've just gone for a run on Saturday and I've injured my foot, and I think I still have that trauma response of I'm gonna die. This is what's gonna happen. I'm getting close to another condition that I'm gonna have to relearn, and is gonna challenge me again. And yeah, every year around November, December, I have those same feelings that come up. So yeah, I've gone off track, but
No, you haven't at all. I think it's a very human response. I think a lot of people have that around their diagnosis time, especially if they had quite a traumatic diagnosis, especially if it brings up a lot of things within you that kind of obviously can, make you anxious, make you feel like a bit unsteady more than anything else. So I think that's just a completely human and expected. Really. And I guess that also comes to, I think what has also spoke to me with listening to yourself and listening to a few of the other guests that I've had recently is um, people with diabetes really sort of respect and um, gravitate to people who are willing to be vulnerable. In your case, Instagram, of kind of like, it's actually hard. These are things that you really feel, and you're kind of like sharing some of those experiences, which are very personal. How is that for you to do? And also, like, what's the general responses that you kind of receive from that
yeah.
type of engagement?
Online, you can always get both sides of the story, different perspectives, which I do love because I don't expect everyone to be the same. I like the fact that there's different opinions and difficult debates. So online, it has generally been a really positive response from me, figuring myself out, going through university, doing more research in type 1, and have had a really good support system from the community. There's obviously the side of the fact that I'm quite positive about type 1. Am I taken away from how difficult type 1 is, which I'm still type 1 diabetic. You can't change the condition no matter how easy it becomes or how well you manage your diabetes. It's still diabetes at the end of the day. We still all deal with the same or similar struggles. So yeah, it's been a really positive response over the past 4 years, but I do understand that it the condition is really, really tough, and it's good to get control of your diabetes so that it doesn't control you, but it's still good to respect the fact that it's tough. It's tough to do. It's a tough condition to live with. So just having that balance between reflecting on how hard it's been, but also appreciating yourself for putting in all that time and effort to get where I have today. To do both. Yeah.
Yeah. No, that definitely sounds good. I mean, I've sort of shared a few things recently about my challenges, various different things, and it feels like a very strange thing to do. But often what you don't appreciate is even if there's one or two people out there who are undergoing or are having something that is really, really challenging for them, to know that for someone else is experiencing that the same, and also that they're finding ways to get through that is kind of like pretty comforting in some ways. It just kind of gives you that hope, especially in dark moments. So I'm sure that's why a lot of people will obviously come and sort of resonate, and within the space that you create within diabetes with Millie. So I'm sure there's a lot of people out there who probably would kind of value that, the fact that you're putting that out in the world, for sure.
I do get really lovely messages from people saying exactly that. So yeah, it's definitely um, me. I just love my Instagram, and I love that other people then message me and say I love your Instagram too. It's such a great bond that the Type 1 community has, and I couldn't have excelled to a point of being comfortable with my diabetes without that community, I don't think.
So where do you see sort of it going from here? So from what I've heard you obviously describe, you've obviously had your diagnosis, you're learning about how to manage activities, different types of activities, kind of your changing philosophy in life is kind of intertwined with your diabetes journey, sort of incorporating a lot of the Eastern philosophies in terms of mindset, breathing techniques, meditation, along with obviously more Western strength training, etc., etc. There's obviously a community out there that really values that from kind of the following that you have. Where do you see your personal journey going with kind of the activity and also with diabetes with Millie? What's kind of on the horizon for you personally, and how do you see that impacting the people who follow you and kind of chart your journey?
Yeah. Well, I'll go back before I go forward again, just
Sure.
so it makes sense. So I completed my biology degree, and that's where I had a love for the body, but not a niche. I didn't know what path to go down from biology. Do I go into medicine? Do I go to nursing? What do I do? Um, then I was diagnosed with Type 1. Did a master's in exercise physiology where I tried my best, and it was really frustrating for the supervisors because I was like, I just want to research Type 1. That's it. Did a 3-day study on nocturnal hypoglycemia post exercise, and then came to the Lake District, got my PT done, yoga instructing, and now I do fitness classes and yoga classes in the Lake District. I love hiking. Most recently, I'm just writing a proposal for another master's degree with women's health and type 1 diabetes, which I'm really, really excited to do. I think it's a really understudied subject, and I'm really passionate about insulin responses and glucose responses to the menstrual cycle, because that's something that I feel that the community is lacking in response to conversation and awareness. So that's what I'm on with at the moment. I'm also, I've told myself for years to just start coaching business, specifically PT, and to start off with. But now that I do have that yoga background, I would really like it to become a well-rounded, holistic approach to wellness, using both strength training and yoga mindfulness to fully get about your day, instead of just one or the other. Might as well do the whole thing. So it's a well-rounded approach, and I'm also on with that. And they're my two big projects at the moment. My master's, next master's degree, and maybe integrating that into a PhD. I'd love to research physical activity within the female population of those living with type 1 diabetes. Um, but yes, starting off first with masters, and potentially a coaching business. They're my two projects.
definitely I just had to come from the XTOD study day, and I've actually got Jane Yardley coming on the show. She's going to record the episode next week, which will be really interesting because she was discussing just basically what you're saying is, most of the evidence based around activity and exercise with type 1 diabetes is mainly on males. And if it's on females, there's no consideration of the type of where they are on the menstrual cycle, and also where they are on their hormonal journey from young adolescents, where there's little impact, difference between males and females, and then obviously from adolescence onwards there is, and then perimenopause and menopause afterwards. There's huge unknowns for the glucose response, the insulin requirements, what it takes, the adjustments that are needed. So there's a whole host of interesting things to be found out, and maybe kind of part of your master's and PhD will dig into that a little bit. And it's interesting to kind of also hear you say you kind of got several elements going on. You've got kind of like the research and clinical side that you're interested in. You've obviously got the PT and the sort of the business side of things to try and pull that into practicalities of real life. And then also sharing that kind of story along with people with type 1 along the way for those who are, sort of interested in other aspects as well. So it sounds like you got your plate full.
I love having my plate full. I love having like 4 or 5 things on at once and just barely get into each of them. I don't know why I do it to myself, but I'm definitely a yes person and just go with it, and then afterwards go, well, that's kind of like doubled my schedule, so I don't know how I'm going to but that's what we're going to do. Yeah, there's other things on my mind, and I'd love to create a community within the UK that can come together online and offline to work out, to train, but also to do some yoga. I think that would be really good for the type 1 community to feel a comfortable space to exercise in, because I know there are barriers to starting exercise whilst you've got type 1 diabetes. So I'd like to remove some of those barriers and say, hey, we're all going to do this together. There's hypo snacks there. Let's train. But again, that's another thing on my mind, that if I had 10 days in a week, then maybe I could do that. But
And a magic wand.
yeah, exactly. But my goals are to find out some key findings about women with type 1 relating to menstrual cycles and physical exercise, and bringing exercise into the type 1 community, both with my research background and just being silly online. I think you can have both. Sometimes I say to my family and friends, like, do I need to become more professional? And I think I'd rather just be myself and have that. It doesn't reduce the amount of capabilities that you have. So if anyone's listening that thinks, oh, do I need to like become more professional if I'm going to go down this path? Now, I think you can be silly and know what you're talking about at the same time.
Yeah, it's just be you. At the end of the day, if that's how you enjoy life, that's how you roll. Then that's why people seek you out, isn't it? They realize it's not just like stiff information. It's actually someone who's living it, who's willing to have a bit of a laugh, and it's sort of that really comes across. So I guess I'll kind of summarize what I think, well, certainly what I've learned and sort of what I understand about your journey, and then kind of leave you with maybe to give some parting thoughts, and maybe people who are interested in finding out a bit more about you, about what you do, and kind of come and find you. So it sounds like, for me, obviously a fairly traumatic experience and very isolating experience at the beginning, which then made it challenging to kind of get out there. But part of that going on social media and sharing your journey sort of was a dipping your toe into the actually, kind of, I'm going to chart number one for accountability perspective, how to kind of manage this condition and share that, because I find it valuable seeing other people's, maybe some people find it valuable for me. And then as your personal journey's developed from kind of strength training, going on sort of an Eastern philosophy, blending that together with sort of clinical research, and then trying to build that into a sort of a holistic approach of managing life, but also diabetes within that, and then sharing that online. I guess that's probably speaks to me why people will, when they find you online, they're interested in, number one, what you've got to say. And then also interested to see what's coming in the future, because you're obviously someone who's driven and has got ideas, and certainly from a female and a women's health perspective, it sounds like there's some value to be gained moving forward, both clinical research and obviously the stuff you'll put out there. So does that sound like a summary and reflection of the journey so far?
And I don't know what more to say. Actually, I think that was spot on. Yeah, that's great.
So if people are going to find you, whereabouts will they find you, and what would they expect to see?
Yeah, Diabetes with Millie on Instagram. I'm also on Instagram on another account called Balance with Millie. So if you'd like the yoga, soon to come PT and side of things, then head to Balance with Millie. But that's in the works at the moment. Diabetes with Millie is where I am on Instagram, and that only, I think, don't really do Snapchat, Facebook, TikTok, sorry, but Instagram. I've also got a community on WhatsApp. We've got Glucose Gals, which is home to nearly 250, maybe even more now, women in the UK and across the world that chat daily. My phone's actually popping off right now with all the girls in the chat that talk about anything, but specifically type 1, that comes up a lot because we're all women with type 1 diabetes. And within that are also pregnancy chats, exercise chats. So you can find your subject that you want to chat about in the drop down. So if you'd like to be a part of that WhatsApp group, then head to Diabetes with Millie and just give me a message and we'll get you in there.
Well, that sounds like a good place to round off. I think people have got a good idea of, what it's all about, and also where to find you if they feel like, what, that sounds interesting to me. That sounds like right on my street. And like I say, that's one thing I'm finding, certainly with this Beyond the Numbers, I'm very much a research and clinical based, what's the actions? What do you do? What does the evidence say? What does guidance say? And that's one thing. But then there's real life implementation, which is beyond the numbers of actually living with the condition. And it all seems to be for me, from what I've seen, is people resonate with people who they like. They either look like them, or they think like them, or they want to be like them, or they're interested in the same things as them. And then they congregate around certain, either individuals or groups around that. And that gives them real comfort. It gives them belonging. It gives them meaning. And I think, certainly from a healthcare professional perspective, where I obviously sit from as a day job and then a person with diabetes on the outside, it's very easy on the healthcare professional side to get lost in theory, evidence, guidelines, etc. And then sometimes that it's actually missing this human connection that can't be given by a healthcare service, which is see everyone once a year or something like that. It can only be to give information. So I think actually to have these opportunities available, which obviously social media presents those opportunities, is so valuable. And that's definitely one thing I've picked up from doing this series is, people need people at the end of the day. And because people type 1 diabetes is not in your next door, maybe sometimes going online to find those people who you really resonate with is an easy way to do. And that's what I've really enjoyed about this series, is to meet different people doing different things with different, kind of things that resonate with different people. And you're certainly one of those. So I would say thank you for the type 1 diabetes community for putting yourself out there. And hopefully some of the listeners will head out and come and check you out.
I also want to say thank you to the community for what they've done on and in the community since I've been in the community. It's so great, especially World Diabetes Day a couple of weeks ago. It was so lovely to see everyone celebrating the day together. And I also want to say thank you to you, John, for allowing me on the podcast to speak my mind for an hour. I think you've asked some really good questions and it's been lovely chatting to you. So thank you for that.
Oh, it's my pleasure. Well, good luck, and good luck with your future ventures. Sounds like you got your plate full. And who knows? Maybe there'll be a round 2 at some point when you've done your master's and PhD, etc., and you can come and tell us what you've learned.
Yeah, definitely. Let's do that. Let's book it in.